Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going specifically in South Africa's Sunday's River Valley Municipality.
Yeah.
It's all about the stuff that impacts, well, your daily life.
Okay, got it. Like what?
Think finances, timelines, potholes that never get fixed. All those things.
Right, the nitty-gritty of local government. Makes sense.
Exactly. And we've got a mountain of internal documents to dig through, annual reports, tender proposals, the juicy stuff.
Sounds like fun.
Our mission is to figure out how these projects actually run, where the wins are, and, well, where things might be a little less than ideal. Those areas ripe for improvement. So let's get this deep dive started.
All right, I'm all ears.
Sunday's River Valley Municipality, or SRVM for short, Eastern Cape of South Africa. Beautiful spot, actually, known for its nature and agriculture. You've got the Addo Elephant National Park for the tourists, and then there's a thriving citrus industry. Lots of orange trees.
Okay, picture postcard stuff.
Pretty much. And their mission statement really emphasizes a people-centered approach to providing services. They align their work with these 5 national key performance areas, which I guess gives us a nice framework for this deep dive, right?
Yeah, a roadmap of sorts.
Exactly. But enough of the introductions. Let's get down to the brass tacks, the money. Their 2017-2018 annual performance report is our financial compass here. Now, their debt coverage ratio seems pretty healthy at first glance, which means they should be able to handle their short-term debts.
Sounds good so far.
But then you look at their service debtors to revenue ratio.
What's that?
It's, well, it basically tells you how long it takes them to collect on outstanding payments from, like, residents and businesses. And theirs is a whopping 191,415 days.
Whoa, hold on. You're telling me it would take them over 500 years to collect on those bills?
500 years, give or take. Yeah. It's a little hard to believe.
That's not just a delay. That's practically an open invitation to never pay your municipal bills. Something doesn't add up.
Right. It's not just inefficiency. It raises serious questions about mismanagement, potentially even deliberate. Could this be a sign of something deeper? Systemic issues, maybe even
Corruption.
Exactly. We'll have to see where the trail leads. Now, this financial strain seems to show up in their project performance as well. For instance, the Kirkwood Fire Station refurbishment that was completed on time and within budget. A real success story.
Okay, a win for SRVM.
But then you have the upgrade of the Patterson Wastewater Treatment Works. That project's been plagued by delays, though some parts have been finished.
Interesting. Why such a stark difference?
That's the million-rand question. Are resources being allocated efficiently? Are there problems with their procurement processes? We need to dig into the mechanics behind these projects to really understand what's going on. Otherwise, we're just scratching the surface.
Agreed. Let's peel back some layers.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So let's dive into some specific tenders. We've got documents for everything under the sun. An ICT audit, chemicals, a landfill site. The variety is impressive.
Lots to unpack there.
What's striking, though, is the emphasis on local production and content in all these bids. It seems like SRVM is genuinely committed to supporting local businesses.
Putting their money where their mouth is, so to speak.
Yeah, but the devil's in the details, right? For example, the bid for the ICT audit, they're laser focused on this thing called the R-Data system.
R-Data? What's that?
It's their financial management system. And they're particularly interested in its security and how it interacts with the banking system.
That does sound a bit specific.
It raises eyebrows, for sure. Why such a deep dive into this one particular system? What are they really looking for?
Could be they're aware of vulnerabilities, maybe past issues, or they're searching for specific irregularities, maybe signs of,
Oh, you mean those potential signs of corruption we were talking about?
Exactly. We'll have to keep an eye out for any clues in the other documents, but this definitely adds another layer to the intrigue, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Speaking of intriguing details, there's this one bid for paving brick construction and an automatic gate. One bid comes in at just under $200,000. Another, over $416,000. Quite a difference.
Wow, that's a big gap.
Makes you wonder what their criteria are for evaluating these bids. Is it just about getting the lowest price? Or are they looking at experience, local content, proposed timelines, all those factors?
Right. This lack of transparency definitely raises questions about their decision-making process.
Good point. And this isn't just some abstract exercise, right? Remember that advert we saw about supplying PPE, like protective gear, for those EPWP workers?
Yeah, the Public Works program.
Right. It's a stark reminder that these projects aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They have real-world consequences for the people involved.
Absolutely. The safety and well-being of real people are at stake.
Connecting that back to the financial challenges we discussed, it paints a concerning picture.
Mm.
I mean, if they're struggling to collect revenue, they're going to have less money to invest in safety measures or manage projects effectively.
It's all connected.
A domino effect. Okay, let's zoom out for a second. Big picture time. What patterns are we seeing when we look at their financial performance alongside these individual projects?
We're seeing recurring issues with cash flow, right? And there seem to be bottlenecks in their procurement processes. Plus, there's this concerning lack of strong monitoring and reporting mechanisms. It all adds up.
It's like a checkup that reveals underlying health problems. So far, we've got a municipality grappling with revenue collection, potential mismanagement, and these questionable decision-making processes. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We've got a lot more documents to analyze, more projects to dissect, and a whole lot more to uncover about how SRVM really operates.
The plot thickens. I can't wait to see what else we find.
Stick with us as we delve deeper into their performance reports and see if we can unravel the mystery of that R data system. It's going to get interesting.
All right, let's take a closer look at SRVM's performance reporting, specifically those key performance indicators, or KPIs that we mentioned earlier. Remember, these are supposed to measure how well they're delivering on those 5 national key performance areas.
Yeah, those big picture goals. So what kind of KPIs are we talking about here? What are they actually tracking? Give us the nitty-gritty.
Well, some focus on the basics, like what percentage of households have access to water, sanitation, electricity, waste removal, the essential stuff.
Right, the bread and butter of municipal services.
Exactly. And then others track their financial health, like, how much of their capital budget do they actually spend on those planned projects?
Okay, makes sense. So how did SRVM measure up? Did they hit those targets or were they falling a little short?
It's a mixed bag, really, which I guess isn't surprising at this point.
Yeah, starting to see a pattern here.
On the bright side, they achieved a 100% success rate in providing free basic services to registered indigent households. So, at least those most in need are getting the support they need.
Okay, that's good to hear. Some positive news.
And they made good progress in water and electricity access. Over 90% of households connected.
That sounds pretty impressive. At least they're making headway in some areas.
Yeah, they're not all doom and gloom. But remember that huge service debtors to revenue ratio, the one that suggests it would take them over 500 years to collect on those outstanding payments.
Oh yeah, how could I forget that one? Kind of hard to shake that image, 500 years.
Well, it seems that issue might be directly linked to their overall performance in revenue collection. They were aiming for a 10% increase in revenue, but they ended up with a 14% decrease instead.
Ouch, that's gotta hurt. What's the explanation for that? I mean, is it just people refusing to pay their bills?
The report points to a few factors, actually. Rising unemployment, for one, and an increase in indigent debtors, folks who can't afford to pay. Plus, they mentioned some challenges with their water meter strategy.
So it's not just a simple case of people dodging their bills. There are deeper issues at play, potentially compounded by problems with their own systems.
Exactly. It's important to look beyond the numbers and understand the context.
Okay, so they're struggling with revenue collection.
Mm-hmm.
What other areas are raising red flags when it comes to those KPIs? What else are they not quite hitting the mark on?
Capital project spending. That's another area where they're falling short. While some projects, like that Kirkwood Fire Station refurbishment, were completed on time and within budget, others were significantly delayed or underspent. Didn't quite go according to plan.
Any specific examples that come to mind?
Well, take the upgrade of the Patterson wastewater treatment works, for example, the one we discussed earlier. They only managed to spend 81% of the allocated budget.
Oh, right, the one with all the delays.
Yep, that's the one. And then there's this project to upgrade the electricity network for future development. That one didn't even get a NERSA assessment outcome by the year end, which basically means it's stalled, stuck in limbo.
So, not exactly a glowing track record when it comes to managing those big infrastructure projects. What kind of impact do these delays have on the community, though? I mean, are we talking minor inconveniences or something more serious?
These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, right? They have real-world consequences. Delays in these upgrades can directly impact service delivery, stall economic development, and even, in some cases, pose risks to public health. It's not something to be taken lightly.
Yeah, that domino effect we were talking about. One problem just leads to another. And it all circles back to SRVM's stated aim of being a people-centered municipality.
Yeah.
If they're not delivering on these essential services, It's the people who suffer.
You hit the nail on the head. It's a reminder that these reports and figures, they represent the lives of real people, people who rely on these services for their well-being.
Okay, so we've seen their struggles with service delivery and with capital project spending. What about their performance in terms of economic development? Creating jobs, boosting the local economy. Did they manage to make any progress in that area?
Well, this is interesting. They actually exceeded their job creation target, created 278 jobs against a target of 160. So that's something, right?
Wow, that is a significant difference. So their efforts to boost local employment, maybe through supporting small businesses or investing in local projects, those are actually having some impact.
Seems like it. But it also raises another question. Are those jobs sustainable? What are the wages and working conditions like? Are these opportunities that genuinely help the community in the long term, or are they just temporary fixes?
Good point. We need to look beyond the numbers and consider the quality and the long-term impact of these jobs. Are they creating a pathway out of poverty, or are they just a Band-Aid solution?
Exactly. It's not just about quantity, it's about quality too.
All right, so we've covered service delivery, capital projects, and economic development. What about those less tangible areas, like good governance and public participation, the stuff that's harder to measure but equally important? How do they perform on those fronts?
Let's start with transparency and accountability. There's this KPI that tracks the percentage of internal audit and audit committee recommendations that were actually implemented, actually put into action. And, well, this is where things get a little concerning.
Okay, lay it on me. What's the verdict? Did they manage to walk the walk?
They were aiming for a 70% implementation rate, but they only achieved 30%. Big gap there.
Wow, that is a huge difference. What's the explanation for such poor performance? What's the holdup?
The report says monitoring of that audit action plan has been, and I quote, inconsistent due to capacity constraints within their internal audit unit.
So basically they're saying they don't have enough people to properly follow through on these recommendations.
That's the gist of it, yeah. But lack of resources is often a convenient excuse. It makes you wonder if there's also a lack of political will to address these issues.
Right, a lack of motivation to actually make those changes. But this is a critical part of good governance, isn't it? If they're not taking those internal audits seriously, what does that say about their commitment to transparency and accountability overall?
Exactly. Without strong internal controls and a willingness to actually act on those recommendations for improvement, the risk of inefficiency, mismanagement, and even corruption, that risk goes way up.
It's not a good look.
Yeah.
Okay, what about public participation? Did they make any effort to involve the community in these decision-making processes? Get people engaged and make them feel like their voices are being heard?
Well, there's a KPI that tracks the number of community outreach and awareness campaigns they did, and they actually exceeded their target there. They held 8 campaigns compared to the planned 4.
Okay, so they're at least making an effort to engage with the community. That's got to count for something, right?
It does, but we need to dig a little deeper here. What was the quality of those campaigns? Did they really involve residents in a meaningful way, or were they just checking a box? True public participation, it goes beyond just informing residents. It's about actively involving them in those decisions that affect their lives.
Right. It's not just about talking at people. It's about listening to them, too. So maybe quantity over quality in this case. Something to keep in mind as we go through the rest of their activities.
Yeah.
Now, let's circle back to that interesting detail from the ICT audit bid, the one about scrutinizing that R data system. Why are they so focused on that one particular system? What's the big deal?
Well, the bid document gives us some clues. They're not just looking at routine maintenance here. They're going deep into the security and the integrity of the system, especially how it connects to the banking system.
Okay, break it down for me. What exactly are they looking at? What are they trying to find?
They're reviewing ICT general controls. Things like ICT governance, user access management, change management, business continuity, incident management, how the system is managed and secured, the whole 9 yards.
Sounds pretty thorough. But why this specific focus on that connection between the financial management system and the banking system?
Yeah.
What's so special about that link?
That's the million-rand question, isn't it? Could be they're worried about vulnerabilities that could expose the municipality to financial risks. Or maybe they're looking for signs of irregularities or unauthorized transactions, evidence of potential.
Corruption. You think they're looking for signs of funny business?
It's a possibility. And when you think about those concerns we discussed earlier about their revenue collection and capital project spending, it makes sense that they'd be scrutinizing their financial system so closely.
It's like they're trying to plug leaks in a sinking ship.
A very apt analogy. And the timing of this audit, alongside those other financial red flags, it certainly raises questions.
So this isn't just a routine checkup. It's a deep dive into the heart of their financial operations. And with the potential for corruption looming, it's something we definitely need to keep an eye on. Okay, what else can we glean from this ICT audit bid document? Are there any other red flags or any other interesting details that jump out at you?
Well, there's this section titled Declaration of Bidders' Past Supply Chain Management Practices. It requires bidders to disclose any past instances of abusing supply chain management systems, convictions for fraud or corruption, or failure to comply with government contracts, basically skeletons in the closet.
So they're trying to weed out any bad apples, make sure they're not working with shady characters.
Exactly. Seems like a sensible precaution given everything we've seen so far.
Yeah, better safe than sorry. Okay, we've thoroughly dissected this ICT audit bid. It's given us some intriguing insights into their financial management practices, and it's definitely raised some serious concerns about potential corruption. But we've got to keep moving. What other fascinating documents await us in our quest to understand the inner workings of SRVM?
Let's shift gears and delve into a service that's absolutely essential for any community: waste management. We've got a bid document here for the operation of a landfill site for a period of 36 months.
Well, let's get our hands dirty with the nitty-gritty of garbage disposal. What does running a landfill actually entail? I mean, is it just dumping trash and calling it a day?
It's way more complex than that. This bid outlines a whole range of responsibilities. We're talking daily covering of waste, cell compaction, controlling scavenging activities, cleaning up spillages and wind-blown litter, maintaining existing infrastructure, constructing new drainage systems, managing reclamation activities, and ensuring compliance with all those environmental regulations. It's a big job.
Wow, that does sound like a logistical nightmare. Lots of moving parts.
Definitely requires specialized expertise and a strong commitment to environmental responsibility. The stakes are high, too. If a landfill site is mismanaged, it can have serious consequences for public health and the environment. Not something you want to mess around with.
Okay, so how do they go about choosing a contractor for such a critical service? What are they looking for in a potential bidder? What makes someone qualified to handle all that garbage?
Well, the bid document outlines a detailed evaluation criteria, a whole point system. It's out of 90 points total, and 20 of those points are allocated for price. So cost effectiveness is definitely a factor.
Makes sense. Got to keep an eye on the budget.
Right. But another 20 points are for the bidder's experience. They have to prove they've successfully completed similar projects in the past. So it's not just about finding the cheapest option.
Or looking for someone with a proven track record.
Exactly. And then there are 10 points for their proposed site operational plan. Basically, how good is their plan and is it actually feasible? Then there are 15 points for the bidder's organization and key operational team. They need to show they have the right people in place to manage this project effectively. So it's not just about the technical side of things, it's about the human resources too.
Okay, making sure they've got a solid team.
Yeah. And finally, there are 10 points for local content, again, encouraging bidders to use local resources and contribute to the local economy.
There's that theme again. Supporting local businesses. But I'm curious, does the bid mention anything about community engagement or education related to waste management? Encouraging people to recycle, compost, reduce their waste. Seems like that would be important for promoting responsible waste disposal practices.
Unfortunately, no. This document doesn't really go into detail about those aspects, which is a missed opportunity, in my opinion.
Yeah, it seems like a disconnect between their stated goal of being a people-centered municipality and their lack of focus on community engagement in this particular area.
Yeah.
Okay, we've explored the ins and outs of this landfill site bid. What other areas of service delivery do we need to investigate? What else is on the agenda for today's deep dive?
Let's dive into the world of water treatment next. We've got 2 bid documents here, both dealing with the supply and delivery of chemicals. One for wastewater treatment and one for water treatment.
Chemicals, huh? Sounds a little more technical. What kind of chemicals are we talking about? Anything I should be worried about?
Flocculant, chlorine gas, sodium hypochlorite. These are all essential for treating water to make it safe to drink and for treating wastewater to protect the environment.
Okay, so these are the ingredients for clean water and a healthy environment.
Exactly, and they're not just buying any generic chemicals. The documents outline very specific technical requirements, making sure those chemicals meet the standards for effective treatment.
So they're being meticulous about quality control. What about choosing the suppliers? How do they decide who to buy these chemicals from? What are their criteria?
Similar to the landfill site bid, they have a detailed evaluation criteria. Price is a big factor, 80 points out of 100. But they're also looking at the bidder's BBEE status level, which encourages participation from Black-owned businesses. And they're considering the bidder's contribution to local economic development.
So again, we see that emphasis on supporting local businesses, but are they striking the right balance between cost effectiveness and local empowerment? I mean, are they potentially sacrificing quality or expertise to achieve those goals? It's a tough balancing act.
You're right, it is. It's a question worth considering, but it's good to see they're at least aware of the need to support local businesses.
Absolutely. Okay, so they're being thorough about the technical specs and emphasizing local empowerment. Anything else that stands out in these chemical supply bids? Anything that catches your eye?
They also really emphasize the importance of health and safety regulations, especially when it comes to handling hazardous chemicals. They've got detailed delivery procedures, making sure those chemicals are transported safely and securely to the various treatment works.
So they're thinking about the entire process, from procurement to delivery to use, and making sure it's all done safely. That's reassuring.
It's about protecting the workers and the environment, making sure those chemicals are handled responsibly.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. Landfill management, chemical procurement. What's the overall picture emerging from these bid documents? Any key takeaways so far?
Well, we're seeing this consistent emphasis on cost effectiveness and local empowerment. They're also being thorough about those technical specifications and emphasizing those health and safety regulations, so that's good. But there are still those concerns about transparency in their decision-making processes and that lack of focus on community engagement in some areas.
A mixed bag, as usual. But these details, they're crucial for understanding how SRVM operates, where their priorities lie, and where there's room for improvement.
Exactly. We're starting to get a clearer picture of how things work behind the scenes.
But we're not done yet. There are still more documents to analyze, more projects to dissect, and more insights to uncover.
We've only just scratched the surface. Stick with us as we delve into their community and social services. We're going to examine how they're addressing issues like solid waste management, access to recreational facilities, and those tough social challenges like HIV/AIDS and gender-based violence.
Stay tuned, folks. There's a lot more to uncover in our deep dive into the Sunday's River Valley Municipality.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and dive into SRVM's work in community and social services, the stuff that's often connected to those infrastructure projects we've been talking about.
All right, sounds good. Let's see what we can find out about their initiatives in this area. What kind of insights do these documents give us?
Well, the annual performance report highlights a bunch of objectives and their KPIs. For example, one of their goals is to make sure communities have good, affordable options for solid waste disposal. Keeping things clean and healthy.
Right, public health and the environment go hand in hand.
Exactly. And I've got specific KPIs to track their progress, things like the number of cleanup campaigns they do, the percentage of households with access to basic waste removal, and how often those landfill sites we talked about are maintained, all that good stuff.
So how are they doing in this area, meeting those targets? Or are we going to see more of those inconsistencies that keep popping up?
It's a bit of both, actually. They did manage to provide 70% of formal households with access to basic solid waste removal. Hit that target right on the head.
Okay, so at least they're making progress in expanding access to those essential services.
Yeah, that's the good news. But on the flip side, they fell short on the number of cleanup campaigns they were supposed to do. Only managed 3 out of a planned 4.
Falling behind again. What's the excuse this time?
You guessed it, cash flow problems. The report specifically cites that as the main reason for the low numbers.
There's that recurring theme again. It seems like those financial constraints are really holding them back in a lot of areas. It's a good reminder that good intentions only get you so far. You need the money to make things happen.
You said it. Limited resources seem to be a constant hurdle for them. But it's not all bad news. They actually exceeded their target for landfill site maintenance, conducting 10 activities compared to the planned 6.
Oh, so they're keeping those sites in good shape.
Yeah.
That's a relief. Considering all the potential problems that come with mismanaged landfills, those can be real hazards.
It seems like they understand the importance of maintaining those sites properly, even when they're tight on cash.
So ups and downs, the usual story. What other community and social services are they focusing on? What else is on their plate?
Well, they're also working on providing suitable and affordable recreational facilities and public amenities, especially for young people. Things like renovating community halls and maintaining cemeteries.
Right, those spaces where people can come together and connect. That's important for any community. It can make a big difference in people's lives.
Absolutely. And they did a good job with the community hall renovations, completing 3 instead of the planned 2. But here's the strange thing. The report doesn't say anything about how many cemeteries they maintained. No data whatsoever.
Oh, that's weird. And a little concerning. It makes you wonder about their transparency and accountability. If they're not tracking their progress in certain areas, how can they say they're serving the community effectively?
Good point. Comprehensive and transparent reporting is crucial for building trust. If they're not being open about what they're doing, it raises questions.
Okay, so they're tackling infrastructure and those kinds of things. But what about those bigger social challenges,
Yeah.
the tougher issues? Are they doing anything to address things like substance abuse, HIV/AIDS, gender-based violence?
The report does mention their efforts in those areas. They ran 8 HIV/AIDS programs, more than their target of 4, and they hit their target for programs aimed at children. So they're not ignoring these issues.
That's good to know. They're at least acknowledging those challenges and trying to do something about them. But the question is, how effective are these programs? Are they making a real difference in people's lives? That's what really matters.
That's the key question. And unfortunately, the report doesn't give us a lot of details about the content or impact of these programs. We just have the numbers without any context.
So we know how many programs they ran, but we don't know how they were designed, who they reached, or what outcomes they achieved. It's hard to know if they're actually working without that information.
It points to a need for better monitoring and evaluation. They need to go beyond just counting activities and start measuring the real-world impact of their work. Are they actually making a difference?
All right, so we've covered their work in waste management, community infrastructure, and social programs. What's the big picture here? What can we conclude about their approach to community development?
It seems like they're making a real effort to address a wide range of community needs, everything from those basic services to those really complex social challenges. But their effectiveness is limited by those ongoing financial constraints, inconsistent performance, and that lack of detailed reporting on those program outcomes.
Good intentions, but flawed execution. That seems to be the theme here.
Yeah, they have a vision, but they struggle to turn it into reality. And this really highlights the importance of not just setting goals, but also putting in place strong systems to make those goals happen. You need systems for implementation, for monitoring, for evaluation. Without those systems, even the best intentions can fall flat.
So what does all of this mean for the people who live in the Sunday's River Valley Municipality? Those folks who rely on these services every day.
It means it's time to get involved. You have a stake in how your municipality runs. Talk to your local government, ask questions about their programs, demand transparency and accountability. Make your voice heard.
Don't just sit back and wait for things to happen. Get involved. Learn about how your municipality works and fight for the changes you want to see. Knowledge is power, and the more you know, the better equipped you are to make a difference.
Exactly. Informed and engaged citizens are the key to a thriving community. Hold those elected officials accountable, push for better services, and work together to create a community that truly serves its people.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Sunday's River Valley Municipality. We've looked at their finances, their project management, and their efforts to serve the community. We've seen some successes, highlighted some challenges, and identified some areas where they can definitely improve. But most importantly, we've gained a better understanding of how a local government works and how their decisions have a real impact on people's lives. Thanks for joining us on this journey. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.